Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren O'Neill. Look at all of you beautiful journalists. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are here today to talk about how to connect with the younger generation of news consumers. Our panel here is called Swipe Up. Do we have any teens in the house? Teenagers? Anyone teens? No? Okay, I didn't think so. Do we have any? Oh, really? All right, good for you. I was going to say, but I'm sure we do have people here who have teens at home, have teen kids, have children, right? So I don't need to tell you that most people born after 1990, and especially those born in the 2000s, aren't really sitting down for the nightly newscast or cracking open the newspaper or listening to the radio like they used to be. Younger millennials and Generation Z are far more likely to rely on social media platforms for their information, which is obviously a bit of a problem right now for our industry, given the current circumstances. In this session, we're going to explore how to connect with younger news consumers, how to draw them from socials to owned and operated platforms, how to remain relevant in a loud and chaotic media environment, and why Bill C-18, otherwise known as the Online News Act, is making much of this far more challenging. Now, we've got three amazing panelists here I will introduce, but I will let you know that after we do a little bit of chatting, there will be a Q&A period, so get your questions ready, and there will be someone around with a microphone, so you can ask our esteemed panelists anything you'd like. Speaker number one on the end here, this is Alison Middleton, Editor-in-Chief of Narcity. She joins us all the way from London in the UK. Narcity needs no introduction. It's absolute juggernaut in the digital media space with millions of millennial readers. Speaker number two is Anita Lee, a true innovator in this industry. She's a longtime journalist as well as publisher and founder of The Green Line, which is a hyper-local, community-focused outlet geared toward young Torontonians. And please correct me if I'm wrong on that. Okay, cool. Awesome. And then lastly, we have Natalie Crowell. She is the senior producer of audience experience for CBC's The National. And I can guarantee has seen her fair share of changes in consumption habits over the past, I think, 13 years, is it? With the 15 years with the public broadcaster. That's incredible. And as for me, you'll see, that was a millennial reference. I'm Lauren, as the Spice Girls. We were joking about how our little mics make us look like a girl band. So I kind of started my career in journalism around the same time that everyone was really going hard on Facebook. I was at the Toronto Star, then I was at the CBC in their social media department for 5 years, and then was recently at BlogTO for 7 years, and starting a new job on Monday in radio. That says, that'll tell you everything you need to know about C-18 right there. Let's begin. I'd like to start by asking each of our panelists how C-18 is affecting the ways in which you reach your audiences. So let's start with Allison. Here, sorry. Allie's her nickname. Can I say Allie? Or?
With Allie. We'll go.
Allie, okay.
Yeah.
It's Allison here. It's like, Allie, how has C-18 affected things at Narcity and with your audiences?
In a very big way. So Narcity is obviously a social first brand. We built the brand off of reaching the younger demographic where they are already engaging with their communities and consuming news, so predominantly through social and predominantly through Facebook and Instagram. I talk to people no matter where I am or who I'm speaking to, and they know Narcity or they know MTL Blog, which is our Montreal local brand, because of our prevalence in their social feeds. So obviously, our ability to connect with these users where they already are has been a big part of who we've always been, and what we are good at and what we love to do. The Meta's response to this bill has drastically impacted our ability to do that. So for those of you who may not have realized, Meta has blocked Canadian users from being able to access any of our content through Facebook and Instagram, which had a very immediate and very drastic impact on our traffic and therefore on our revenue. But more importantly, just on our ability to deliver on our mission to reach this younger demographic where they already are and to kind of, go with their natural behaviors of how they like to consume news.
That's very concise. That's a great explanation. I want to record that and just play that for everyone when they ask me what's going on with this whole C18 thing. Anita, have you been experiencing similar things with the Green Line?
Yeah, so for context, the Green Line is a hyperlocal independent news outlet that's community driven. So we consult the communities that we report on about the issues that they care about. So there's a strong kind of analog in-person portion to the Green Line. We just launched last April, so we have not been as impacted, given like our very analog approach, though we are very digital first as well. Combined with the fact that we just launched last year, we have not been as impacted, but I can say that 30% of our social traffic has decreased. Our overall traffic has actually increased over time, but that doesn't mean that I'm not upset about the loss of the 30%, because obviously that would have been beneficial. But the way we've kind of worked around it in some ways is that we've built a lot of relationships, direct relationships with grassroots community partners on the ground. So we build audience through in-person engagement often a lot of times, because events are very much embedded into our editorial model. Yeah, we do also a lot of community surveying. So we develop direct relationships with the community members and the audience members that we do serve. So, and the whole idea is that the more you engage them, the more you cover things that they actually care about, the more they're actually going to engage with your brand. So, yeah.
Awesome. And Natalie, how are things going over at the SEEB?
So, I mean, like it did have an impact on our strategy that we had in place. We had just rolled out a whole new a strategy that became irrelevant very quickly. But at the National, our core product is a video product in a newscast. So it didn't really impact. It's not impacting our core product and how we deliver that to our audience. But how we touch and find that emerging audience and younger audience, yeah, that's it does have an impact in that way. But like when it happened, we pivot. That's what we do, right? So I don't think it's going to be the last time a platform changes or an audience behavior changes suddenly or quickly or more quickly than we expect. So we quickly went back to the drawing board to find new strategies and redirect that energy into new places. So.
Awesome. Just following up, I remember when I was at the CBC, we had first started streaming the national broadcast on Facebook.
Yes,
yeah. Is that still happening?
No.
People loved it. People went crazy for it.
Yeah, we actually moved away from live streaming on Facebook several years ago for various reasons, but...
I'm a bad news consumer. I apologize for not knowing
Yes,
that.
but it was hot. Like when we started streaming on Facebook, it was like a hot live stream. It got big numbers. It did really well. And we saw that audience behavior change over time. So that's like an example of how we pivoted there too.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, I'm going to put the next question out to all three of you. Feel free to jump in. I'm going to ask you for some tips and tricks. What are you doing to draw audiences away from socials that are owned by huge California-based tech giants into your owned and operated platforms?
I can start actually. So C18, YouTube is actually not covered under C18. So, and the Green Line actually has a partnership with City News Toronto where we produce a community show called Your Community that gets released every other week on Fridays. So as a result, we have a lot of video content that we can repurpose and actually put on YouTube as well as alongside original content. So what we're trying to do is pivot to that platform because it makes a lot of sense. And you guys might have heard recently that YouTube is actually trying to highlight more authoritative news brands. So it's not just algorithmically based where they're directing people to whoever, like any person who's disseminating information, whether it's good or bad. They're actually making a deliberate attempt to kind of focus on really quality journalism, which is fantastic. So that's one thing I'm doing. The other thing is that the Green Line has an action journey model. So we have a core model that basically tackles where in a given month, we tackle one systemic issue facing the city. So in week 1, we publish an explainer about a systemic problem. Week 2, we publish the feature. Week 3, we have an event where we convene sources from the story, community members, members of the public, industry stakeholders to discuss possible solutions to the problem. And then in week 4, we publish an article that crowdsources the solutions surfaced at the event, and we reflect those back to community members so they can take action on them on their own terms or take action on problems in their communities on their own terms. And so you can see like there's engagement embedded into that process. So the events are really critical in terms of us getting FaceTime with our audience, collecting emails, and as a result, it's a slower build, but as a result, it's a more loyal audience and it's more sustainable in the long run because you're not really giving away your audience to like a third-party platform. You're really owning that.
That's super innovative stuff. Yeah, I'm really excited to see the future of kind of where this leads. Yeah, I have a good feeling. Ladies, you want to add anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, on our end, I mean, we are obviously a very different type of business to the likes of the CBC, and we have always kind of thrived in our ability to pivot very quickly, be very adaptable, kind of that sort of startup mentality really from the beginning. So we had to really, really streamline our operations. We had to really scale back our operations, and we had to really think about, like, how do we get back to what the core of our business really is and what we set out to be. So the last 6 months in particular has been kind of a big focus on getting back to the root of our local identity. So the local travel, the local food and drink, local things to do, highlighting, you know, what's amazing about your city. And that's where we feel like we really add a value proposition and something unique in the Canadian market. And I think that's going to be more and more important as we move forward. And I'm sure we'll kind of get to that shortly, but that's kind of the place we've started. It's, you know, important to acknowledge that search is obviously a huge part of our business also. So while being mindful of the fact that there are concerns about over-reliance in that space, we obviously continue to optimize our SEO strategies and really, you know, adopt and implement AI tools and all of that. We're really leaning into balancing that local coverage with more service journalism, so thinking about how do we create content that helps Canadians just make decisions in their day-to-day lives? And we're having a lot of success in that space, so we'll continue to kind of, you know, balance both things as part of our coverage, while still really trying to stay very focused on that local identity. You know, there are a lot of other things we're experimenting with, of course. You know, we have a newsletter, and we're continuing to publish on you know, X and on TikTok and on Flipboard and Apple News and our syndication partners. We're experimenting with other ways to find audience on other platforms, like looking into WhatsApp and those kind of things. And obviously always adapting our .com to make it as interactive as possible and bring people direct. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that the behavior of that younger demographic, they're not going direct to an RCD.com. That's just not their behavior. So, you know, over-investing into that also doesn't make sense. So ultimately, I think for us, of course, we continue to experiment, and we will always do that and always pivot. But, you know, for everyone to be aware that there is no silver bullet. Like, of course, we don't have the answer about how you turn a business built out of social and a broad reach into something that is bringing this younger demographic who are on social, and that's how they're consuming news. So yeah, no easy answer, but trying a lot of things, certainly.
Gotta try, right? Just throw a whole bunch of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, I used to always say. Natalie, how is the National driving more people away from social onto, you know?
Yeah. We never really used social as a device to drive people to own and operate. It was more a familiarity play and a brand play. I guess in short, the pivot we made was like we are going harder on YouTube. YouTube is a priority. It's a great discovery platform for the brand, and trying to experiment with YouTube Shorts in the wake of that too, to get people more eyeballs on the videos, as well as dabbling into TikTok too, to just see if we can find the new an emerging audience that way as well. There's one trick. I have like one tangible trick I can give to like driving to oh no, if that's the elusive moving people over, which is like that we do on like, we monitor overperforming videos, so videos that are getting high traction, high views, and do insert cards on YouTube that do, and with like some good language and stuff to try and draw people back to our site for a feature piece that adds more, like if you're interested in this story. So that's like one thing that you can play with, is with those cards on YouTube, which, you know, we've seen some moderate success with those. So
yeah, I mean, if people are already interested in the video, want more context, it's
a lot to build into a workflow when you don't have a lot of, you know, to do it on if you have a lot of content. But if you identify those overperforming videos and where there might be an opportunity to push.
That's really smart. Yeah, because it could, I could imagine it taking forever to do that to every single piece of content.
Yeah.
But just identifying the ones that are really getting the eyeballs. That's very clever. All right, I'm going to ask you all. I think, Anita, this is kind of a good one for you. In this environment where it's harder than ever to reach younger audiences, how do we effectively address their concerns? I mean, younger people are looking at things like affordability, housing issues, climate change, whether or not Taylor Swift is at the NFL game. You know, that's a very dark joke. Kids are actually interested in very serious things as well, though, you know, like younger audiences. And so I think that's something that you're doing effectively, right?
Absolutely. So our mission statement is that we investigate the way we live to help young and other underserved Torontonians survive and thrive in a rapidly changing city. So the service orientation is built into our mission. And so in terms of the way we serve our audiences, we call ourselves effectively a lifestyle publication, but it's not like Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow, 10 scented candles in your bathroom. We're talking about real life, like we're talking about food security, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about housing and employment. And so that's actually why we take an action journey approach, because the way I see journalism moving is it's less passive consumption of the news, it's more like leveling up from engagement to engagement 2.0. We're trying to get people not to just engage with our content, we're trying to get them to engage with the world around them as a result of the journalism that we produce, because obviously journalism, everybody in this room knows this, is a pillar of democracy. And so I want, the way we're kind of managing that is by encouraging people to take the reins on their life, because I feel like a lot of young people feel like very anxious, depressed. There's a lot of research that shows that. They feel like it's very chaotic. They don't have a lot of control over things. So in some ways it's an empowerment kind of play in getting people to consume the information with an intent to actually do something about it. But we do intentionally, like, because we consult the communities that we serve, we constantly get feedback that our younger audiences want us to cover subjects like the ones that I listed before, because it actually has to do with their like well-being.
Love that. Allison?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you're saying is so true. Obviously, the engagement part of it and it being a two-way conversation is so important, and that's why for us, again, it's figuring out not only has this blocked our ability to share links and drive traffic, but also to engage with our audience and kind of hear from them and what they want from us. So, of course, you know, always brainstorming new ways to try and create that engagement. But I think, you know, off the back of the question that you're asking, like the biggest concern I would touch on is just not only has this, you know, it halted our ability to reach our audiences, but it's also created a major information gap for the younger audiences who now aren't as easily having access to fact-checked, reliable journalism, and the concerns that come along with that. And like you said, this is so important for a democratic society, and you know, just what's happening right now is the perfect example of that, where we're seeing so much disinformation on social, and everything that's happening in Canada with this bill and Meta's response is only making that worse. And I think those concerns only, you know, only continue if we don't see a change in this bargaining and the legislation.
Natalie?
Yeah, I think, so getting to topics and getting your content to appeal to younger people from a topic perspective. I mean, for the National, it's been an interesting challenge with my time there, because it's world news, it's international news, it's not necessarily what young people or what you would think young people want to consume. But I think that there is a hunger for this kind of content, for this kind of news, for this kind of information with a younger demo, and we are seeing it in the numbers. That if you make it accessible, make your news accessible, and what I mean is providing, we often talk about designing our stories with on-ramps to news so that you're allowing people to come in and feel empowered to want to know more. And finding opportunities when we can do that, like an explainer would be a very basic example of that. We're going to do depth coverage on this, but can we provide an on-ramp first for that audience, or additionally for that audience if needed? So thinking about it like that, I mean, you guys both touched on it, listening to your audience is key. Listening to your audience through engagement, through data is key, I think. And as well, and I think having young people on your team and actually listening to them is a really important thing as well. Yeah.
Yes, I can say from experience, just seeing different newsrooms and stuff, you know, having people in the demographic working for you is clutch. Yeah. And then having newsroom leaders too, who are willing to put the trust in what young people are saying, it's great. Are there any questions at this point? We do have a couple more questions, but I wanted to just open up the floor if anyone has. Yes.
Thank you very much, Natalie, for talking about the on-ramps. I It wasn't too clear when you mentioned Skid Explainer, or the on-ramp that you were talking about for getting the young people to be able to access the news content. If you can provide another example in addition to just expanding more on the one that you gave.
Sure.
And then when you do have young people that are on the team, what sort of roles do you give them? How do you get that information from them to help with tapping into the market more? Mm-hmm. And then when you get that, in terms of how you get the information from them, but also what formal processes do you have in place to make sure that they're getting heard and that the information is being applied?
Okay, yeah. So on the first part, with the on-ramps, I think that a basic I think what I'm saying is when we know we're going to roll into big coverage on something, we'll use the news happening now out of Israel and Gaza. Doing that coverage, but also listening to the audience and the questions that they have and providing that content. So CBC News has an amazing audience listening team as well that we can tap into. That's listening, they're checking the comments for questions. They've got incoming questions coming in, but actually paying attention to that information that's coming in and catering your content to it. So if we know that we're doing all this amazing coverage, depth analysis, all this, but there's this weird question that people have about a very basic part. So let's do that. Let's tell that story, and that would be an on-ramp, I think, which is something that works in a program, in the on-demand space, or on social as well. So, and then maybe if someone sees that and they feel like, I get this more, and then they want to proceed into further coverage, hopefully. And as far as processes for young people on the show, I don't think I have anything formal to add to that. As someone who was once a young person on the show, I remember not being, there is, I think if we want to tell the stories that are going to resonate with them, we have to understand the framework that they want to approach that story, the lens that they're seeing the world through when it comes to that story. So I think I would just say listening to them, making space to listen to how young people are seeing this on your team and following through on that.
Thank you for your question. No, I just wanted to ask really quick about this. You had just kind of mentioned search. Ali, you had talked about search and the importance of SEO. I mean, we know that Meta has responded to the Online News Act in quite a, I might say, severe way. What kind of future, what does the future hold if Google does the same? If they start not censoring, but kind of blocking Canadian news results from search results. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I think you're looking at me here, so.
All three.
Obviously, yeah, it's a reality that we have to prepare ourselves for, but I think the sentiment that's kind of been going throughout today so far, or at least for what I've been able to hear from it, is also sort of the sentiment that we have at our company right now. We still feel quite positive about the fact that some kind of negotiation and agreement will be reached. It's very hard to imagine a reality where that's not the case. So I think, internally and in terms of motivation for our staff and for myself and how I feel about the future, I still feel quite positive about that. So I'll sort of say that first and foremost, but then I think also just recognizing that, yes, we are thinking about other ways to adapt our business model where perhaps content doesn't become one of the largest revenue drivers and what that looks like, but content still being the core of what that is. So I still think that everything we're doing right now are all of the right things to kind of create that base for, okay, we're going back to who are we? We are refocusing on our core topics that we're really good at, that we build authority on in Canada. And if we have to pivot and some of the things that we're looking that you have touched on as being a big part of your business, it's like the event space and more in-person engagement and all of that. There are a lot of ideas and ways that we see we could move our business forward and that we will explore no matter what happens with Google. But no matter what, we still think content will be the core of the business to kind of, be who we are to be able to push whatever business model we adapt to moving forward.
So nobody's pivoting to Bing yet.
I totally co-sign a lot of what Allison said. It would be really not great for the industry, obviously, if Google followed through and we can access traffic from SEO. But for all intents and purposes, from what we can't use tech giants as a catch-all anymore because it's clear that Meta and Google have responded in very different ways. And from what I've seen, because I've worked with the Google News Initiative before, and the team there, they've made it really clear that they are invested in news and that their own products would suffer as a result of actually blocking off traffic to Canadian publishers, which is counter to Meta's experience, which is like they've actually experienced higher engagement as a result of removing news from their platforms. So I still have like hope and faith that this will resolve itself well, but similar to Allison, I think like any good business owner, especially as a startup, you have to diversify your revenue. You can't rest on your laurels. Like, I think that was something that we learned from, the ad-focused kind of business models of previous publications. And we don't want to make that mistake again. So, and I also just to wrap my point, I think it's no longer, journalism should evolve. Content is definitely like queen. But at the same time, I think the way people experience journalism should be much more holistic, and ultimately it's a service. So whether it's like through AI or VR or text or video or events, you're still, as long as you're informing your communities, like that is an act of journalism. So I think we should, obviously explore avenues beyond content.
That is a great soundbite. Someone needs to clip that. Natalie, do you trust Google? Am I allowed to ask that?
No, not me. But I don't. It doesn't really impact my world, so I don't have a ton to say on that. But I think going back to what you said there, that it's sticking with doubling down on what you're good at and what your core value and services to the audience is probably where we're going to focus our energy as things unravel.
Awesome. Well, I mean, National's been around for a very, very long time. I'm sure it will continue to adapt excellently. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Anyone? If not, then I'm going to ask all three of you. I think we have a few minutes left. This is a tough one. Just do your best. What is your prediction for the future of the news industry in Canada? Say 5-10 years down the road. What can you see happening? I mean, channel your inner Margaret Atwood. I mean, what?
What we hope, or what?
Yeah, what you? I mean, what? Yeah, what you hope, what you think would be cool, what you fear might not be cool. Just opening up the floor. What do you see as the future of news in Canada?
Well, I think hunger for information isn't going anywhere. Hunger for trustworthy information is probably going to grow, hopefully, as technology, as AI, and all the stuff that's coming goes. So in that regard, I'm optimistic about it. It's how people consume, when they consume, where they consume. That's just going to continue to evolve, and I don't think that we can predict 10 years down. It's like 6 months down the road, we don't know, So I think, again, going back to focusing on your core value, your core service, and then just like go with the flow when it comes to how that lands with the audience. But it's also important to, as we move down the road, I think to be able to adapt with your audience and paying attention to how their consumption is changing, and not just from a technical standpoint, moving here, moving there. It's doing it from an editorial standpoint too. So I think that just keeping touch, having an audience team, I would say is very helpful to designing your content as well.
Awesome. So listening to the audience, producing excellent content, that's, I think that is a hopeful future.
Yeah, people might watch it on their fridges or wherever, we don't know, but I'm optimistic that there will be a deep value for the work we do going forward. Yeah.
Love that.
I would say the future of journalism, I hope and I think, is collaborations and partnerships. And I've been really heartened by, I'm collaborating in a very productive, fruitful relationship with the great folks at City News Toronto. Speaking about collaboration with Torontoverse, which is a local startup in Toronto, and have collaborated with the Hoser. And I think, I'm somebody who really cares about filling gaps in coverage, because there's a lot of news deserts across the country. And so I really think there's a place for legacy and also emerging media, and that we all have value and we can actually collaborate to actually properly serve all Canadians. And yeah, like I think it's a really, and there's a lot of, especially among, I'm also the journalism innovator in residence at Toronto Metropolitan University, and I'm teaching entrepreneurship workshops to a lot of my students who are really excited to turn their side hustles, their side news hustles into something that they can really make a reality. So I think there's going to be a lot more solopreneurs, a lot more smaller new startups, because there's a lot of platforms like, say, Canva, and because of AI helping kind of make workflows more efficient, it'll be a lot easier to kind of start your own thing. So that's something that I'm anticipating.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And off the back of that, one of the main conversations we're having all the time is around the creator economy, of course. And I think that, we're going to continue seeing a move more towards the individual versus the publisher, and how publishers kind of embrace that, not only through co-creation and partnerships, but also considering a reality where creators become the distributors of the content, and we actually work with them to, maximize how they're using their platforms and address some disinformation through supporting them with training or whatever that might be. I think like how we kind of combine and mesh those worlds going forward will be super interesting. And yeah, the other thing I think, just, with that in mind, the importance of brand, and I think the brands that survive will be the ones that have a very, very clear value proposition and aren't, trying to spread themselves too thin, which we have definitely been guilty of doing in the past, particularly with COVID, and in a model where you are chasing page views to a degree, it's easy to try and be all things to everyone, and we all know that that's not going to be a sustainable business. So the brands that kind of really, really focus on what they're good at and embrace that creator economy are the two things I would say.
Awesome. I think we can all agree that authoritative, trustworthy information is going to be in demand in the future. And I'm really personally looking forward to seeing how innovators like yourselves make it happen and reach young audiences and on our televisions, I was meant to say fridge televisions. I'm picturing like one of those fridges with the TVs on them. I really would like to see that one day.
I have to buy a new fridge, and I've been looking, and I was like, why is there a TV on the fridge?
Are they actually playing TV on fridges?
There's TVs on fridges now.
I've seen I've seen the screens. I would love to watch the National on my fridge. All right. Thank you guys so much, everyone. If there aren't any further questions, all right, well, you can come and speak to Allison, Anita, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining us. And up next, before I conclude, Joanna McPherson will be hosting some tech experts up here for some tech talk to talk about how technology is shaping the future of the industry. So if you like AI and all of that fun stuff, it's going to be a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.